County Flood Control District's virtual community engagement meeting to discuss the Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin. My name is Sparkle Bell with the Flood Control District Communications team. This virtual community meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to continue to share vital information with the community during this period when in-person public meetings have been suspended due to safety concerns from the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm joined tonight by a team of Flood Control District leadership and subject matter experts to ensure we continue to keep you up to date on these important flood mitigation projects in your community. We are glad to see you all so engaged in this project and look forward to sharing updates. This virtual public meeting will begin with a presentation to share project updates, including the construction schedule and other important information on Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin. The presentation will be followed by a virtual question and answer session with Flood Control District team members. Attendees will be able to submit comments and questions through the website or by phone. Any comments not addressed during the Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the public comment period. Instructions on how to participate in this virtual open house are included on the slides, on this virtual meeting webpage, and the Flood Control District's website. I will also share a reminder of these instructions when we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. We will now transition to Marcus Steckett, Engineering Division Director, who will share information about the district and about this project. Marcus, over to you.
Thank you, Sparkle, and a special thank you to each of you for joining us here tonight. In this presentation, we'll give you a brief overview of the plans for the B512-02-00, the Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin project. But before we get into the project, I'll share some information about the Flood Control District. So the Harris County Flood Control District, we are a special purpose district created by Texas legislature in 1937 in response to floods that devastated the Houston area in 1929 and 1935. We were created as a local partner to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction projects. Over the past 80 years, our mission has greatly expanded with billions of dollars of infrastructure in the ground. And while we are a separate entity from Harris County, the Harris County Commissioner's Court that serves as our governing body. So the mission of the Harris County Flood Control District is to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. One of the most difficult challenges we face is constructing effective projects that are sensitive to community and natural values in highly urbanized areas. Harris County includes 22 main watersheds, totaling approximately 1,800 square miles and more than 2,500 linear miles of channel. 2,500 miles is approximately the distance from New York to California. So our area is flood prone, and here are some reasons why. We're prone to extreme rainfall, including tropical storms and hurricanes. We have flat, slow draining landscape or topography. And we have clay soils that do not soak up excess rainfall as quickly. The Flood Control District works with other agencies and shares jurisdiction over flooding issues in Harris County. This slide illustrates that shared jurisdiction. Inside neighborhoods, as shown on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving away from streets and homes. Storm sewers and roadside ditches are the responsibility of the underlying municipality and Harris County Engineering in unincorporated parts of Harris County. The larger bayous and channels that take the collected stormwater and move it through our drainage system to the Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the Flood Control District. And that is shown on the right side of this illustration. In the middle, the Stormwater Detention Basin, which is sometimes constructed by the Flood Control District. And so when stormwater runoff increases, this creates an increase in runoff. And since it is our policy to avoid impacts to properties downstream, these stormwater detention basins help take in and safely store excess stormwater runoff during a heavy rain event. Often we partner with Harris County precincts, utility districts, and others to add recreational amenities such as trails to these basins and along our channels. On August 25th, 2018, Harris County voters approved $2.5 billion in bonds for flood risk reduction projects. This vote followed a series of meetings across Harris County in each watershed, which resulted in a list of what is now 181 bond projects. 144 of those 181 projects have been initiated so far, including 10 in the Armand Bayou watershed. A total of more than $680 million in partnership funding received so far stretches the 2018 bond program even farther. The actual timing of individual projects will depend on a variety of factors, including environmental permitting, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocations. Project lists and schedules will be updated periodically. Partnership funding is an important aspect of the 2018 bond program. This graphic illustrates the many sources of federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working to secure for Harris County. Each agency has its own definition of eligible projects and its own requirements for local match funding. We'll now move into the portion of the program that's specifically about the Armand Bayou watershed and the plans for the Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin. The proposed Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin project is located within the city of LaPorte, south of Spencer Highway. It is composed of two compartments, roughly north and south of Willow Springs Bayou. This project began as a voluntary home buyout area. The basin is one of multiple projects that will be required to reduce flooding risk in the Brookglen area. This project is primarily funded by the Natural Resources Conservation Service grant. This is one of those funding partners that I mentioned earlier. And the 2018 Flood Control District Bond Program is going to provide the additional funding for this project. So the grant funding from the NRCS was awarded in 2019. We are currently in the preliminary engineering stage. This stage is expected to be completed in winter 2021. The project design stage is projected to start at the beginning of 2021. And the construction process is anticipated to start in the fall of 2021. The primary objective of the Brookglen Stormwater Detention Basin project is to reduce flooding in the Brookglen subdivision as part of a larger drainage plan for the area. A significant challenge this project faces is a design conflict with an existing 30-inch gas pipeline that's shown here on this exhibit by a dotted red line. The basin has to avoid the pipeline, which would reduce the capacity of the basin, or move the pipeline, which would mean a significant additional cost. The portion in blue of the map shows the pre-Atlas 14 100-year floodplain, and the orange portion of the map shows the pre-Atlas 14 500-year floodplain. A 100-year floodplain has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year, and a 500-year storm event has a 0.2% chance of occurring in any given year. For reference, a current Atlas 14 100-year storm event equates to approximately 18 inches of rainfall within a 24-hour period. This is approximately equivalent to the pre-Atlas 14 500-year floodplain, which is approximately 19.3 inches of rainfall within a 24-hour period. The purpose of the proposed detention basin is to provide additional stormwater storage for the channels of B512-00-00, which is shown in the north and south direction on this exhibit, and the B512-02, which is shown in the east-west direction on this exhibit. As I stated in the previous slide, there is that 30-inch existing gas pipeline that passes through the south detention basin. So this project area is located within the 100 and the 500-year floodplain, and it's just prone to flooding. Combined with the clay soils, which I stated do not effectively absorb stormwater, the topography of within this area creates a bowl that naturally causes stormwater to collect. The proposed stormwater detention basin will be a large engineered structure that will be constructed by excavating the existing soils within the area. The proposed stormwater detention basin will be dry bottom basins with outlets that drain into the flood control district channels. So during normal storm events, runoff will drain into the proposed stormwater detention basins. And during large storm events, the basins will take in, temporarily hold the stormwater from the channels that they are connected to. And this will reduce the potential for erosion and flooding downstream. Once those stormwater levels recede, the stormwaters from the basin will drain slowly back into the channel and then continue downstream. So there are two basic types of detention basins. There's a wet bottom, and that can include a permanent pool, a vegetated shelf, and a bottom shelf, and that provides the habitat for wildlife. A dry bottom basin, it will include a pilot channel as well as possible amenities such as ball fields or parks. Dry bottom basin is recommended for the Brookglen subdivision due to the Federal Aviation Administration regulations, and that regulation is intended to discourage conflicts between aircraft and birds. So the LaPorte Municipal Airport and the NASA flight operations at Ellington Field are both near this proposed stormwater detention basin. Hence, we decided to go with the dry bottom. So this project proposed, we looked at three different alternatives for design to maximize the detention storage volume while working around that existing 30-inch natural gas pipeline and considering the cost and hydraulic impacts. Those options included the relocation of the gas pipeline, placing a culvert underneath the gas pipeline, and finally just avoiding the gas pipeline altogether. From this summary of alternatives, alternative 2 was recommended for final design. This alternative provides the largest storage volume. It avoids the 30-inch natural gas pipeline and was determined to be the most cost-effective alternative. The benefits of this project alternatives are that it potentially provides the mitigation needed for future locally funded storm sewer improvements that could be made to reduce neighborhood flooding risk. So now we can look at these alternatives in a little more detail. Alternative 1 includes the maximum use of the basin, the South Basin footprint. This alternative assumes that the pipeline crossing through the South Basin will be relocated from the entire proposed footprint of the basin. The proposed basin would connect to the existing City of LaPorte Brookglen Park detention basin via two 36-inch reinforced concrete pipes that will go underneath Somerton Drive. Alternative 1 would rely on overland flow to inflow into the Brookglen Park Basin and the equalization of that flow through those 36-inch culverts to fill that detention basin. The existing Brookglen Park outfall would remain as is, with some recommended improvements to remove some of the silt buildup that's built up over time. The cost of the pipeline relocation would likely exceed the Natural Resources Conservation Service grant funding that we received, but we kept this alternative for comparison purposes, as it gave us an idea of what the maximum detention scenario would produce. So alternative 2 evaluated the South Basin as a split South Basin with interconnected compartments that drain directly into Willow Springs Bayou. And it connects directly into Willow Springs, which allowed by the proposed South Basin, it allowed the proposed South Basin to be deeper and increase the storage volume. Alternative 2 would protect the gas pipeline within the berm that divides it and avoids a costly relocation expense. The two sides of the southern basin would connect with culverts passing through the berm underneath the natural gas pipeline. The major challenge of this configuration is that it requires a minimum of a 1 foot clearance between the top of the culvert and the bottom of the pipeline. Alternative 3 is the least expensive option by utilizing the existing detention basin and storm sewer pipe along Gladwine Lane to fill and drain the proposed basin. Alternative 3 would address the potentially costly relocation issue by protecting the pipeline within the berm that is dividing the South Basin. However, Alternative 3 actually provides the least amount of storage volume. So to recap, the recommended Alternative 2 consists of the following for the North and South detention basins. The North detention basin will outfall into B512-02-00, which is a tributary to Willow Springs Bayou. The South detention basin will be split into an East and West basin and will be interconnected with pipes that will be placed underneath the natural gas pipeline. The proposed, the two basins will provide outfall west to the Willow Springs Bayou. The Eastern Basin will receive stormwater from the northern channel of B512-02-00, also a tributary to the Willow Springs Bayou. The benefits of the proposed alternative are that it potentially provides recreation for, again, future locally funded storm sewer improvements. And again, that could help reduce some of the flooding risk within these surrounding neighborhoods. Design of the South Detention Basin will also include opportunities for recreational amenities such as trails. Although Harris Flood Control District don't build or maintain recreational elements, we do share our properties with sponsors who wish to do so. So what are our next steps? The preliminary engineering stage will be completed in fall of 2020. The design stage will begin in the beginning of 2021. The construction process, we anticipate that that'll be split into two parts. The North Basin will start construction in fall of 2021, and the South Basin will start construction in the summer of 2022. So as I mentioned before, this project is intended to be one of several projects for the Brookglen area and the Armand Bayou watershed, and all of those will work together to reduce flooding risk. The Flood Control District is now conducting an Armand Bayou watershed planning study, which will identify additional flooding issues, and there'll be some suggestions of projects from that study. You can read more about these and current or future projects proposed on the hcfcd.org website. And now I'll turn it back over to Sparkle.
Thanks, Marcus, for that helpful overview of this project. Before we move into the question and answer session tonight, I want to share a quick reminder that we would love to hear from you on this and other projects rolling out across Harris County. If you have additional comments or questions throughout the life cycle of this project, or if you would like to sign up to receive email updates on this and other projects in the watershed, please visit hcfcd.org/B512. Again, that's hcfcd.org/B512. Community engagement is an important component of the work we do, and we invite your continued participation as projects move forward. As a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. You can submit a comment on the site in the box near the presentation live stream. You can also submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at publicinput.com/Brookglen, or you can submit a comment via phone using the meeting code 9595. If you're joining us via phone tonight, please press *3 to leave a message. Additionally, I want to share that any questions not addressed during tonight's question and answer session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the public comment period. Information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. And before we get started, I would like to send a special thank you out to LaPorte City Councilman Chuck Engelken for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Now, joining Marcus for our Q&A session tonight is Jennifer Hobbs, who is overseeing efforts on this project. And with that, we'll take our first question. And Jennifer, ironically, I'd like for you to take the first question. Can you explain why you are building a stormwater detention basin in this area?
Yes, Sparkle. Thank you for the question. So the reason that we're building a stormwater detention basin in this area is flood control, along with this Brookglen area and some other areas around Harris County. We've had several buyout areas, and with the bond project, we want to make projects out of these areas, and specifically a detention basin here, which can help provide mitigation for future projects, as Marcus indicated, as a bigger plan for this area. So not only will it provide detention and relief to the adjacent areas, but it will provide mitigation for future stormwater projects as well.
All right, thank you. Marcus, would you take this next question? Can you explain why you don't just widen and deepen Willow Springs Bayou?
Yes. So the difficulty with just widening and deepening the bayou is right of way. There's limited right of way along that existing channel. So in order for us to deepen and widen it, there are several homes along there. So that would be, that would mean taking several homes, which we, being disruptive and taking, this is a great exhibit here, but widening, deepening that channel, each home that's along that bank, in order for us to get what we would typically need to just convey flow, we'd have to buy out all of those homes. Also, when you deepen and widen channels, you have to find the detention somewhere else as well. So it just becomes a more disruptive project, especially in highly urbanized areas, to do both channel improvements and detention. So you have to make some decisions to either do one or the other.
Thank you. Marcus, would you take this next question? Why is this project better?
And so I think that sort of goes back to the same point that I just mentioned, and only better in the sense that it allows us to be the least disruptive. So since the Brookglen area was already identified as a buyout area, so the understanding was that at some point it would become a mandatory buyout area, which with it being such a low-lying area and being the bowl within that vicinity, it made a perfect spot for detention, which would allow other improvements to take place as part of this overall watershed or flood damage reduction plan for the entire area.
All right, thank you. Okay, Jennifer, will you take this next question? Will the project solve Brookglen's flooding problems? What other projects are you considering?
Hey, thanks for the question. And the short answer is no. No one project is going to solve all the flooding problems for any given area at any point in Harris County. But what's great about this project is there's a sequencing that has to be involved in any major plan in an area. So in this area, we're starting with detention mitigation. Like Marcus stated before, we already had identified this area as a low-lying area. It was a buyout area that kind of came up after Tropical Storm Allison. And ultimately, we've had a lot of buyouts. And so it was a perfect spot for a project. And then when we recently completed a feasibility study back in February of 2020, we were able to identify even more projects that could help benefit the area, such as some bridge projects. We have another detention basin project downstream that's just about to kick off. And there's also another major planning study that's going on that's going to identify even more projects for this area.
Okay, thank you. Marcus, will you take this next question? It is, you mentioned wet and dry basins. Can you explain why you're recommending dry basins?
Yeah, and a large portion of that wet versus dry basin, even though we do have the wet bottom basins, they tend to provide us with more volume because it's a flat bottom, so it's considered a flat bottom surface. As opposed to with a dry bottom, you have to grade it so that it drains and make sure that it's draining properly and it stays dry for the most time. What's been driving wet versus dry here recently with the flood control district are the FAA rules and regulations as it relates to I think it's called waterfowl drawing amenities or something like that. But whenever you have a wet area, it tends to draw birds into it. And as the planes are taking off or landing, sometimes they encounter these birds or these large flocks of birds, and it just creates a dangerous situations for the planes that come in and go out of these different areas. And so we've been trying to avoid putting wet detention basins within this certain buffer that's been identified by those regulations. So the driving force on this being a dry bottom was our vicinity to other active airports within the area.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, our next question is for you. How will the problem with B512-00-00 and B512-02-00 be resolved?
Hey, thanks for the question. So part of our feasibility study that I alluded to earlier, we looked at the history of this area. And in the history of the area, back in the late 90s, channel B109-03-00 was constructed as part of a relief for B112-02, and it connected through Canada Street. And so we had that going over time, and then there was a restrictor put on Canada Street to drain it back over to B112-00. Now, the thing is, B112-00 can take the stormwater and can accept all the stormwater for B112-02. The issue is because it is such a low-lying topography, as Marcus keeps alluding to, it's a very tricky situation to be able to drain anything out. And you can see here on this map that's on the screen, it's in a floodplain area, so it's very flood prone. And the biggest thing that we can hope for is eventually upgrading the local storm sewer systems in order to take more of that water, which B112-00 can handle, and also opening up the bridge downstream on Fairmont, which the feasibility study did show would be the best cause and use for this detention.
All right, thank you. This next question is from Michelle, and I'd like for you to take it, Marcus. How will this affect property values?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I'm not a real estate agent, so I, to be honest, I don't understand. I don't know how it will affect property values, but if I had to guess, I wouldn't say that it would. That's just it's purely me guessing as an engineer. But Michelle, if you can come up with an engineering question, I can definitely answer that better than what I just did.
All right. And Marcus, I'd like for you to take this next question as well. We're getting several questions actually about buyout areas. Can they be redeveloped if not used for a flood control district project?
And so redeveloped, I guess I'll define redeveloped. So redeveloped being converted to some other use other than a home, then the answer would be yes. So in some cases, we bought out lots and areas and they've become parks as opposed to detention basins, because the intent of a buyout is to avoid putting people back in harm's way. So if we bought someone out there because they flooded 10 times, we would not allow someone to come back in and develop that and live there to put people there. But if it's a park or something like that, we definitely bought out lots and turned them into, small pocket parks and things like that.
Okay, and with that, I want to remind everyone that has joined us tonight. We see some great questions coming in. Please continue to share those questions. But as a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. You can submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. You can also submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at publicinput.com/Brookglen. Or you can submit a comment via phone. And if you're joining us via phone tonight, please press *3 to leave a message. Additionally, I want to share that any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the public comment period. Information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. And all right, so I also want to share another reminder. We have some comments and questions that have come in as it relates to property acquisition. Please, if you have questions about property acquisition, those do have to go to Harris County's Real Property Division. You can contact Jeff Ward or Lori Coulter, and the phone number for Jeff is 832-602-3008. I'll say that again. So his name is Jeff Ward, and that phone number is 832-602-3008. And if you have a pen handy, I'll also share Jeff's email address, and it's jeff.ward@eng.hctx.net. So again, any of those questions that are related to property acquisition should go to the Harris County Real Property Division. Okay, and with that, Marcus, I'd like you to share with the group how this project fits into the larger 2018 bond program.
Yes, and so, as I mentioned during the presentation, the purpose of the bond program was to provide flood control with $2.5 billion for flood damage reduction projects. And what that allowed us to do is to be able to take some of these projects that didn't move as fast because priorities were different in different places, but it allowed us to take a large amount of funds and spread them out over the county to be able to help some of these projects move a lot faster than we typically would have been able to move with these projects. Even this particular project, for example, with it being a voluntary buyout area. So just to give some perspective of funding that the Flood Control District typically worked with before the bond, we had $60 million in capital improvement funds, and so this was $60 million to do flood damage reduction projects, and that had to be spread out over the entire county. And by us having the bond election and having this $2.5 billion, we, within this one watershed, we have just as much for one watershed as we would have had for the entire county. So that's kind of how this project plays into the overall bond program.
Okay, thank you for that. It's always good to hear how these projects fit into the larger scope of all of the great work that the Harris County Flood Control District is doing. Okay, with that, Jennifer, I'd like for you to take this next question. Are you able to say if there are additional buyouts or acquisitions that are anticipated for this project?
Yes, Sparkle, I can say that that is the case for this project. That's something we looked at in the feasibility study, and we take that sort of thing very seriously because we understand that that's a sensitive issue. These property owners, we've had many attempts to notify, and we're in the process of going through that process. I can't really speak too much on that. That's Harris County Real Property Division that takes it from there for any of us, for flood control, for Harris County Engineering. They take over at that point. One of the things I do want to note, we did, I know there was some questions coming in about other homes being bought out in this area, maybe outside of the project. And we did look at several different scenarios in the feasibility process with our planning division. And while in theory, removing any other structure from the floodplain is always what we consider a good thing, but we evaluated the cost benefit ratio, and we found that this was the most ideal footprint. Any more buyouts and stuff, we're not seeing a much bigger benefit to the detention basin itself. So it didn't make sense to seek out other acquisitions.
All right, Marcus, we've gotten a question in about the proposed alternative. I'd like to go back to that slide and see if you can share a little additional information on that particular alternative.
So you're talking about the proposed alternative?
Yes.
And so this is alternative 1. So the proposed alternative was 2. Yep, there we go. So, and sort of the idea for going with the proposed alternative 2. So we looked at these 3 different alternatives. One saying, okay, let's just completely remove the pipeline so that we can maximize the volume, and a scenario where we avoided the pipeline, and then something that was somewhere in between. We selected alternative 2 because we found out that it was the most expensive or the least expensive option, and to help us avoid that pipeline that was there, and also provide us with enough volume, or at least enough volume that we felt would be useful for those future improvements that we talked about. And so that was sort of the reason that drove us towards doing sort of a hybrid between avoiding the pipeline and getting the volume that we needed. And of course, the northern basin that's shown here on this exhibit didn't encounter many problems with that one. So we just tried to maximize the volume that we could for that particular basin.
And I want to share a reminder again, we're getting some more questions about acquisition. If you have questions about acquisition, please do contact the Real Property Division. And again, that phone number is 832-602-3008. And if you have a pen handy, Jeff Ward is your contact, or Lori Coulter, and it would be jeff.ward@eng.hctx.net. They can answer all of your specific questions relating to property acquisition. And then I'll go back to just remind everybody once more, we're continuing to take questions. We are taking questions live tonight here at the Flood Control District offices. And there are a couple of ways that you can submit comments. You can submit them on this site in the box near the presentation live stream, or you can press *3 to leave a message if you're joining us via phone tonight. So we welcome your continued questions. All right, our next question I will pass on to you, Jennifer, and it is about potential trails or environmental features that might be included in this project. Can you tell us if there are any?
Great question. So in a lot of our projects, we end up partnering with another entity like a precinct or a city, HOA in some cases as well, or even like Houston Parks Board. And these other entities will come in and wish to build trails to make it like a nice walking feature for the residents around. Now we haven't. We don't have a partnership yet, but we have had some interest from some local municipalities to build trails in order to connect to some existing trails to the east, which will be a nice feature for those in the neighborhood. As well as that, this project was funded by the Natural Resources Conservation Service Grant. And part of that is to bring these areas back to their natural state. So the residents are going to see a lot of natural plantings and a lot of different features to attract more of the local environment. It's something that we want to look very nice, and that's something that this grant oversight committee is looking at to make sure that we have a really nice project when it's all said and done.
All right. And, I'd like for you, Marcus, if you can you share a little bit about how important partnerships are when it comes to these projects? Because I look at so many of the things that we do, often there's a partner involved.
Yeah, and looking at the exhibit in front of you, you see, it shows all these different lines and how these different sources of funding that Harris County Flood Control District goes after to try to secure for flood damage reduction projects. And the reason that's important is because, even with the bond project and some of the projects we have identified in certain areas, we made assumptions on how much we would need for certain projects. And we also made assumptions on whether or not a partner would be able to come forward to fund some of those projects. So, partnership in this case is a big deal, especially for this project, with having the Natural Resources Conservation Service being able to provide us with a large sum of funds to help us with the, design and construction of this project. Because as we're finding out now, some of the funding for the projects that we assumed we were going to get previously, we don't have enough funding to complete some of these projects. So having these different partners like the USDA, NRCS, the Corps, having the EDA, Economic Development Administration, and all these different partners being able to give us funds to sort of supplement some of the increases in costs that we've encountered as we started to try to implement the 2018 bond program.
All right, thank you. Marcus, can you also take this next question? Can you explain if having a basin near your home is a flooding risk or a benefit?
So having a basin near your home would be a benefit. And here's why. So when you look at a detention basin that in a case where we would consider this one an offline. So what that means is you're taking flow off a channel and into a basin. What we see whenever we do our engineering analyses, what we call our hydraulic analyses, we notice that most of the benefit that you see for a detention basin are those areas that are in the immediate vicinity of the detention basin, because that's the area where the water starts to pull off first. Now, as you tend to go upstream, you see less and less benefit as you move upstream away from the basin, and you may get a little bit of benefit downstream. But those properties that are in the immediate vicinity of the basin will see typically has the largest reduction in flood risk.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, would you take the next question? What are the plans to equalize the water levels between B112 and B109?
Okay, good question. What the feasibility study showed is our restrictor, and I think I've stated this before, is the Fairmont Parkway Bridge, and that's what the feasibility study showed. So unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction over bridges. So this bridge would need to be raised in order to open up B512-00 and allow more flow to come through. And at that point, then per the sequence, we would be able to regrade B512-02 back over through Canada Street again and be able to open up those restrictors and allow flow to go back over B109-03. That would ultimately equalize. Additionally, B509, that's another detention basin that's ongoing, that's going to be downstream of B109, is going to be built and enlarged, and that's going to, again, hold more flow downstream of the area, but that's just another project that is planned for that area. But again, that bridge really needs to come first in order for us to see any true benefit, as well as improving the storm sewer system in the Brookglen subdivision.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Marcus, will you take this next one? Please expand on the future project south of Fairmont Parkway and the time frame.
And so the expansion of the Fairmont Parkway, and I'm assuming we're talking about the bridge there. So right now, it's going to come down to how much funding we have to get to that project, and that's something that we'll work on as we work towards the design of this particular project. But Jennifer, feel free to add any additional details that you're aware of.
Right, and that hasn't come into my lap yet. The only thing that I've been given so far has been the Basin project. But my understanding is we have to identify a partner in order to rebuild that bridge. And it is definitely the next sequence of events per our study. Now, any detention projects that we have planning, like the one that I was alluding to earlier downstream, the other B509 detention basin, where we already own a lot of area in order to dig out this basin off of Red Bluff. And that can be built in any order. Anytime you have detention, you're taking water away. So it's kind of what Marcus alluded to before. Anytime you have a detention basin, that water was already there. We're just holding it temporarily until the channel goes down. So that's always going to be a benefit. But as far as the bridge goes, we have to have a partnership. Anytime there's a roadway, local storm sewers, or bridges, that's not something Harris County Flood Control has jurisdiction on. So we can't just go and rip it out and rebuild it without partnering with whoever owns it first.
All right, thank you. Marcus, can you talk a little bit about funding? How is this project being funded?
So for this project, we partnered with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and that was one of the partners that was identified on the slide with or what we call the spaghetti model. And so a large portion of the funding will come from that grant that they provided us, and the flood control district will make up the difference for the construction by adding funds that were identified as part of the 2018 bond program.
All right, we have another question about why we are hosting this as a virtual public meeting for this project instead of an in-person meeting. And as I mentioned at the start of this meeting, due to health concerns related to the COVID-19 pandemic and out of an abundance of caution and really in line with other city and county agencies, we have began hosting virtual community engagement meetings for all of our projects. A recorded version of this meeting will also be available on the project website and on the Flood Control District's YouTube channel. And that project website is on your screen now. It's www.hcfcd.org/B512. And really that just gives you a great place. There's a wealth of information on the district's website, and I encourage you to get connected and really sign up to receive our email alerts and really stay abreast of what's going on in the watershed. All right, let's see what other questions we have coming in. Okay, Marcus, will you take this next question? Is this project the answer to Brookglen flooding? What about the other areas that also flood?
Right, and so just in general, this project, I won't say it's the answer, but it's a component of the answer. So again, this particular project it gives some immediate benefit, but the larger part of the benefit that will be realized for this project are the other components that are part of the overall solution for the area. And I think there are probably about 6 or 7 different components, but Jennifer, I think you probably know more about what those components are and what the sequences are. So if you could, I'll let you speak to those.
Yes, sir. Happy to. So right now, our planning group, it's a different department than ours, but we've been working with them. They're working on an Armand Bayou watershed planning project. And so what that project does is it takes the entire area, because as a lot of you may know, we changed to Atlas 14 rainfall, which is how we plan these projects. And simply what that means is we used to say that in a 1% event every year, which is a 100-year event every year, it might be 13 inches of rain. And now we're saying it's more like 18 inches of rain. So we have to look at that across the county and usually watershed by watershed to make it make the most sense. And so what this study is going to show is it's going to identify other projects and in the best order of what we can do to help alleviate anyone within the Armand Bayou watershed to help reduce the flood risk. And so one of the projects that's already underway, it's called the Red Bluff Stormwater Detention Basin Project. And you can actually find that on our website. It's called C-07. And so that's a pretty large piece of land. I think it's 99 plus acres downstream of the area. And that project is actually kicking off now. So that's something that the residents can see in the future. And then the next thing is the bridge modification. So we've talked about that a little bit in tonight's meeting, and that's that Fairmont bridge. And that was the one that I was alluding to, that we need to have a partner in that project since we don't have jurisdiction over that particular bridge. Now, that's something that we want to do, and we want to assist and help out the entity that has jurisdiction over that. So that would be the next step. And then after that, there's more proposed channel modifications, which is something I alluded to before, which is the B512-02 channel, which our North Basin, as far as this project, connects directly into that. And right now there's a restrictor at Canada Street. So that means that from Canada Street, it flows back to the west to B512-00, which is Willow Springs Bayou, and then it travels down south. So once we have this bridge opened up, then we have more water coming out from B512-00, which is Willow Springs Bayou. And so that means that our channel to the east can take more flow. And so then we can change and do those modifications under Canada Street and allow the water to kind of equal out and provide more relief. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be localized storm sewer improvements because of the bowl-shaped area. And so that's something that we really want to emphasize here tonight as well.
All right, Marcus, will you take this next question? Can you explain why a basin is the first project you're building?
Yes, and so Jennifer kind of alluded to it in her response. The basin has to come first in this particular situation because when you start to do things like upsizing storm sewers or modifying bridges, you're taking something that was once a restriction in the channel and you're opening it up. One of the examples I like to give is pulling out the plug from your bathtub. You know, once you pull that plug, you have a large rush of water going down your drain, but in this case, it's downstream. And so whenever you take a plug and pull it, then yeah, you're great. You've helped all the people that are upstream of the basin, but you start to affect the ones that are downstream of the basin. In this case, I mean, and it's sort of the same thing in this case, because here we would be looking at something upstream to fix a problem downstream. And the reason that the basin upstream helps what you'll do downstream is because it allows you to take off more flow that would have gone downstream and hold that back to slow it down so that you can pull the plug. So whether you put it upstream or downstream, that detention has to be in place before you start to do channel improvements. Now, there are some caveats to that with things like you putting your storage within the channel. So you can always make the channel so wide that that increase in velocity that you create, you actually make it so wide that the velocity slow down and it becomes more of a what we call inline detention. So the detention is always important because if you're going to do channel improvements, you're going to affect someone else if you don't compensate with some type of storage.
All right, Marcus, thank you so much for that information. And I want to remind everyone once again that information from this meeting, along with a recording of the live stream, will be available on the district's website and YouTube channel. And we encourage you, as always, to sign up to receive e-alerts and stay abreast of projects that are going on in your area and in your community. And that website for this particular project is www.hcfcd.org/B512. And I don't see any additional. Oh, actually, I have another question. Jennifer, would you take this next question? What is the message that you have for people who have been contacted about property acquisition?
My message to them is I understand that this is not an easy thing to do or thing to. It's not something we like to do. Now we like to we always want to help people remove structures from the floodplain and reduce flood risk, but I understand that this is your home and this is your property, so it's not that simple. So what I want you to understand is that I want you to call the real property division, and they should be able to help you answer all of your questions. And we're not going to leave you hanging on this process, and they're going to take good care of you guys. And my phone number is available too. While I can't help with the property acquisition part, I can certainly answer any of your questions that you might have specifically about the project.
And on that URL that's listed on your screen, you are welcome to submit any additional questions that you have. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A session will receive a response from the district following the public comment period. So you are welcome to submit additional questions there. And with that, I'd like to share one final reminder that we are continuing to accept comments and feedback on this project through the comment period, which in this case runs from October 15th through October 31st. So starting today and through October 31st. But we, of course, welcome engagement throughout the duration of this project's life cycle. And we thank and appreciate all of you for taking the time to join us this evening and really for your engagement with this project. We, of course, look forward to continuing to share updates as our work moves forward. Again, we appreciate you. Stay safe and have a lovely evening.